Hi, my name is Heather Doherty, and this is my data blitz for the SPSB Personality Preconference in 2024. I'll be presenting on charisma and discrepancies in the perception and self-reported personality traits associated with it. So, charisma is a personality trait that's associated with influence, attractiveness, and charm, and even though it's commonly used in our language, we don't know too much about what causes a person to be perceived by others as charismatic. But one stereotype that we do talk about is how it's linked to psychopathy. For example, people say that Ted Bundy was super charismatic, that's how he was able to get away with what he did, but he was also obviously very psychopathic. And so the goal of this study was to identify self-reported and perceived variables that would predict self-reported and observed charisma. So we had 81 participants that took a survey and 61 of them that also completed a follow-up interview. Our survey had measures of psychopathy, general charisma, charismatic leadership, antisocial behavior, personality, and narcissism. And our interview was just very quick, 5 minutes, really just more of a conversation where we had conversational questions that we asked our participants. We then scored that for charisma, warmth, dominance, energy, potency, and psychopathy. So that was the observed personality measures. And so we did find that self-reported charisma was predicted by both observed and self-reported variables, as well as observed charisma. So self-reported charisma was predicted by observed energy, potency, and warmth, and then self-reported extroversion, agreeableness, charismatic leadership, and narcissism. And observed charisma was predicted by observed energy, warmth, dominance, psychopathy, and then self-reported extroversion and conscientiousness. So to break it down a little bit more, there were a couple variables that predicted both self-reported and observed charisma, but there were also nearly just as many variables that only predicted either one or the other, which tells us that there's a discrepancy between how we're measuring self-reported charisma and how we're measuring observed charisma, because they should have the same exact relationship if they're really measuring the same thing. But they were correlated between each other at 0.035, and this is just a little bit more of a breakdown of the correlations between the variable predictors and charisma. Self-reported charisma shown in blue, observed charisma shown in red, and as you can see, all of their relationships goes in the same direction, but they have very different magnitudes of their correlations. So in conclusion, self-reported charisma was not associated with the same variables as observed charisma was. Observed charisma was associated with positively valent social traits, which tells us that people are perceiving charisma as a positive trait to have. And despite the stereotypes that we discussed earlier, observed charisma was negatively associated with psychopathy and uncorrelated with reported psychopathy. So that relationship that is stereotypical is actually not showing up as consistent in our data. But currently our research is looking at verbal and nonverbal cues that are associated with reported and observed charisma, just to look more into that discrepancy and identify where those differences lay. And we're also replicating this study with an independent sample and using a new measure of charisma to see if we can find something that's a little bit more consistent between self-reported and observed traits. And that's all. Thank you so much for listening.